everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Audacity Academy. Again, my name is Sarah Falciani. I am your host as always, and I am here with another human being. And I've had to say his name like 4 times because even though I've known him for months and months now, and he's interviewed me on his podcast, I still convinced myself that I was going to get this wrong. So today I have the one and the only, the host of the On-Call Empath podcast, Raj Montage. He is, as I said, host of a very popular podcast. He's interviewed me. I've been following him for months, guys. He's an incredible person. He's a coach for empaths. He's an empath himself, and he has amazing wisdom, advice, tips, experiences to bring to talk about boundaries and people pleasing when it comes to being an empath in a very public space. So Raj, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here. And I just loved that episode that I had with you not too long ago. So thank you again for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. It was like a no-brainer. I had to ask you to come on, I had to. And I was like, all the people that I could interview, I absolutely reached out to everyone who's ever interviewed me. And I was like, so return the favor. So why don't you tell us a little bit of your story, how you got to be the host of your podcast, how you ended up as an empath coach. Tell us.
Yes. So it all started back, way back, if we have to go when I was younger. I had, some trauma, family trauma, dealing with people pleasing, boundary issues, all this stuff. I had no clue why it was happening to me, what it meant. I've seen many therapists, many doctors, and was just bouncing back and forth and trying to get answers. But it wasn't until recently, like right around COVID time, I was like, damn it, I can't be like the only one that's thinking this way. And then things got really fucked up with COVID. And so I had all this time, I wasn't working. So I was like, you know what, let me start a podcast called the On-Call Empath. And next thing I know, I started to research empaths and people pleasing and boundaries and narcissism. And I got immersed with all this knowledge. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this with my eyes closed. I know what this is all about because I went through it. And I know I'm not the only one because every person I would ask, I could resonate with. And so I got to a point where I started helping people. And I got to a point where people are like, have you ever thought about coaching? I'm like, no, not really. I don't really have the confidence. I don't want to be on camera. I have attempted to do a lot of stuff and then I would quit. I would start and then stop. Eventually, I recorded one episode in 2019. And ever since then, I'd never looked back. And I'm almost at 200 episodes now.
Yay, congratulations.
And yes. And I was fortunate enough to meet you through this journey as well, because with podcasting, I had so many different guests, so many different people that taught me something. In fact, you taught me so much about boundaries, people pleasing, and believe it or not, manifestation, because you were one of the first people that were like, doing all your, Instagram. And I'm like, this is very intriguing. I got to have her on my podcast. But a lot of the stuff that you did motivate me to shift my narrative towards that. And I'm happy to say that, I'm at over 150, 200 episodes, and I manifested that. I already accepted it. And so I worked towards it. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I got there. And there was a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to happen. So law of attraction, all that stuff, I just started to really embrace it. And here I am today in front of you, and I can confidently say that majority of the stuff that I manifested did come true. And there's a lot more that I want to do in my life, and I am shooting for that. And I have you to thank for that. So thank you for the motivation.
Oh, thank you for trusting me with being a part of your journey, even if it's just checking my Instagram feed every now and then,
Yeah.
I never take that lightly. We can't take that lightly. If someone, as you know, being a podcast host, someone reaches out to you and says, hey, this episode resonated with me, or hey, this thing you said, or hey, even just leading by example and doing what you're doing is impacting me. That's what this work is all about.
Yeah.
Money is great, recognition is great, impact is great, but knowing that we're influencing even just one person through our work is just tremendous.
It's funny because I never went in it through the money mindset either. I was just going in it to just complete something that was missing from me from the abuse and trauma. So I was thinking about trying to make money probably later on, like once I started to really figure out who I was and what my audience was. But before, I was scared to even have my voice on a podcast, let alone YouTube and all that stuff. But it took time and practice, and then I got to a point where I was just like, you know what, this is my calling, and this is what I was meant to do, is to get my voice out there. And I met a lot of people along the way before the podcast, many people that I've never met in my life. Like, they've come in my life for like a day or two, and they would nudge me and be like, yeah, your voice, like, it's you should do something with it. And lo and behold, these people that come into your life, pay attention to those types of people, because they'll drop a nugget, and it will, like, if you blow it off, okay, but if you see the meaning behind it, all these people that I sometimes don't even know what their first name is, they're all here for a reason to give us a lesson in life. And I feel like if it wasn't for every one of these people, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far as I did with the podcast and in life, because everyone has a story. And so I just took a little bit of everyone's and just kind of made it my own and owned it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a huge part of manifestation, is paying attention, because it's not, I mean, it seems like magic sometimes, but it's not, right? Like you visualize what you want, you align with what you want, but then it's paying attention to the nuggets that the universe gives you along the way that's pushing you in a direction. Have that conversation, try that thing, do that thing. And it sounds like you really started paying attention and like listening
yeah,
to those nudges.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And like I said, it's like what we think about, even things that we don't want to happen, if we keep thinking about it, we're bringing that into our existence.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, a lot of that stuff that you do with your coaching, the six-figure stuff. And at first I was like, really? Like, how is that possible? Like, but you actually brought that into your life from the outside. And so it's just a mindset thought process. To me, I was walking around like, yes, I do already have 200 episodes. Yes, I am going to be, successful in, doing this. And so I was just walking around like it already happened,
Mm-hmm.
just to see. And it wasn't like more wishful thinking. It was more like the fact that I really owned it. Like, even when I got in my car, just feeling like the steering wheel and driving and visualizing what I wanted my outside exterior people, or the people that I wanted on my podcast. I actually described it in my journaling. Like, what did those people look like? What does, my job look like? What are my audience? What are they going to know me for? So I wrote it down in very, very good detail. And lo and behold, like, I can't explain it, but a lot of that came right down to the details. And you got to be really in tune with your details. Like, don't be general. Like, if you know
Mm-mm.
what you want, you just say exactly, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm. It's saying what you want, but then being open-minded to how it arrives, because it never arrives how you expect it to, and getting super attached
Mhm.
to that, like, oh, I want to, like, if you want to make six figures, I have to make six figures through my job, or I have to make six figures through my podcast, or I have to make six figures through private clients. But if you look at it as, I want six figures and I'm open-minded to receive it from whatever way it's going to come, and are very crystal clear on six figures, but then it opens up all the
Yeah.
different channels that money can come to you. And that's the beauty of manifestation, is it's like, it does take a lot of faith and a lot of creativity and a
Yeah.
lot of like, whew, don't know how, but I know this is my next step. you know?
Totally, totally. And it's a belief system. And it, at first I was just like, yeah, everyone else talks about it. I read The Secret, whatever, it's not going to work for me. And just that mindset of, it's not going to happen for me. And I just kept thinking that narrative. And it wasn't until I changed that thought process where I mean, I had to put in effort. No one was going to do the work for me. I had to wake up. I had to act like I already have it.
Mhm.
The lifestyle, like you want to be rich, you want to have money. Like, what does that look like? How are you going to live your life? Are you going to stay in bed like until noon and, just waste your whole day away? Well, that's going to take you away from that dream. Well,
Mhm.
then you wake up in the morning, you go work out, you do your journaling, and then you make contacts, network, start meeting people. And that's how I got all these guests, because I get a lot of questions like, how do you get all these people on your podcast? And to be honest, I asked once. Like, I think I asked you once, and it was just like, yes. I've never really had someone be like, eh, let me think about it, or this and that. I do research on that person because there's a connection. I
Mhm.
watched a lot of your videos, to be honest, like on the feeds, and I really studied like your lifestyle. And you weren't just blowing smoke; you were actually doing what you were saying. And I'm like, that's what I need. And so I reached out, and it was just automatic like connection. Like, I knew that this is who I want representing the guests on my podcast, people that are serious, that are not like going to be blowing smoke up people's asses, that they talk the talk, they walk the walk. And that's probably one of the reasons why you're kind of so successful too. I mean, so yeah, your work kind of does resonate with many people. I don't know if you know that. So
It's a long time ago when I was first beginning my manifestation journey. I If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. That's kind of a principle that I adopted. And so I just would think that to myself every day. And I'm like, if I ask, say, I didn't know I would be here. Uh, when I decided to take a year off from my podcast in March of 2021, I felt the call to start interviewing people, but I wasn't yet the person. I hadn't become the person who was going to do that yet. So I took a beat, right, to allow myself to become. But I knew that someday I was going to do it. I knew that where I was going to be here. And I just have always held that energy. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So when I ask people, or when I ask for resources, or when I'm inviting people to buy a course, when I'm inviting people to be on a podcast, it's either a hell yes, or it's not right. And just holding on to that has really it's avoided a lot of confusion, because there's no anxiety. There's no sitting around and going, oh, well, it's a maybe they'll be on it. Maybe they'll do this. No, it's either a fuck yes or it's a fuck no. And then it's it. It makes my life
right.
easier. It makes your life easier. And it sounds like those are the types of guests you've called into your life. Is that
Yeah.
true for the clients you've called in as well?
Yes, like the clients, believe it or not, I don't advertise very much. I'll probably
I've
put more
noticed
empath,
that.
but the people that reach out to me, they will DM me and
Mhm.
ask, are you seeing new clients? And usually it's like people that have been following my podcast, or they'll be following like my page, and they'll resonate with what I have to say. So those are the people that I want to coach. I want people to resonate with me, because I'm not going to twist anyone's arm to, for me to coach them. Like, either we're going to mesh or we're not. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not for everyone, but again, at the same time, I let people know in the beginning at their first session, I'm like, we got to be both a match. Like, you have to tell me, like, you're feeling like something from me, because we're both empaths. But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure like you get to your goals, that you understand why you're doing the same things, why you keep doing the same like cycles over and over, going towards narcissist and not being able to keep boundaries. And this is part of an empath's life. I mean, it's constant work. I'm never going to be cured, but I do know that every day I can work towards doing something to keep myself accountable, knowing that if I do not keep my boundaries, or if I people please, I'll remind myself, you're doing it again. And that to me is more powerful than anything. For me to even have that voice in my head, where before I would just people please and I would just be miserable and take it out on people. But now I catch myself in the middle of a conversation. I'm like, oh, you're doing it, you're doing it. And
Mhm.
then I'll say what I need to. I'll be like, let me back up here. Actually, I cannot do that. I'm busy, and I won't
Mhm.
be sorry about it. And before, I used to be sorry and please don't hate me. And now I do the opposite. I'm okay if people don't, accept me or don't like me, because if people don't like you, you're not doing it right. You got to have haters. You have to have people that have critics. And I'm very big believer of that, because if you're getting everyone to love you, everyone's buying your product and service, and no one's saying anything bad, it's going to come crashing down soon. Because unless you have those critics, those are the people that's going to fuel my fire to push harder and show them, like, you know, your opinion really is helping me. So keep hating so I can push myself over the top. Because if it wasn't for the people in my life that said, "Yo, you can't even speak. How are you going to even do one episode?" Or how are you even going to get one or two guests? You can't even get one person. Those same people, I can call them up now and be like, "See, look at, I got probably more guests than most podcasts." But again, it's not so much for them, or it's not for me to prove to them, like, "Look, you're wrong." It's to me, I'm competing against myself. Like, I'm like the person that I'm chasing, and I'm always chasing, trying to never be satisfied. I'm chasing that person 5 years from now, always just trying to better myself. So I'm not competing with the other podcasters. I'm competing with myself in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're working towards becoming who you have already decided you were going to be. And when you're focused on that path, there's no room to be distracted. Like, I was filling out an interview for a local Austin magazine, and they asked about, I love this question. What makes you different? What makes you different? And I'm sure if you haven't been asked it, I'm sure you will. What makes you different from other podcasters? What makes you different from the thousands of other podcasters out there, tens of thousands, I'm sure. And when you really sit and think about it, I think it's a testament to how far you come with boundaries, with people pleasing not really being a thing anymore. When you're able to honestly look at yourself and be like, there's only one me. Like, what makes me different? I'm the only me. Even if there's someone out there who's doing an empath podcast, who's got the same number of guests as you've got, right? Trying to do the same exact thing. Nobody can do it like you. You're the only you. That's it.
And I always thought, when I started this, like, I got to get everyone to listen. I got to get everyone to accept me and like this and download. Now it's the opposite. I don't want all people to download, because it's not for everyone. For some people, they're not going to resonate with that, and that's okay, because I want those people that resonate with me. I'm doing it for them. And maybe I'm not going to be the biggest or the greatest, but if I can go 10, 20 years from now and look back and be like, what would you leave in your life? What can you say about who you were and what you offered? I'll be like, listen to my podcast. You'll find everything in there, or my book, which hopefully in the future I'll be working on and getting that out. But for right now, I've said everything I needed to on my podcast. And that's like maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, hell, 100 years, when I'm not here, they'll at least know what I was about a little bit, and what I wanted to leave, what mark I wanted to leave on this planet.
It's your legacy. You're creating your legacy. Every single interview that you do, every episode that you put out, that is a legacy. And once it's out there, it's out there. It doesn't matter if it has 1 download, no downloads, or 1 million downloads. It's getting in the hands of the person who needs to hear it.
Yeah. And for anyone that's listening out there that maybe tried a podcast and just kind of stopped, or didn't have that motivation, like, I was obsessed with likes and how many downloads. When I stopped looking at all those metrics, it didn't matter, because I was still getting the big names either way. Because people that were listening to it, that wanted to be on the podcast, resonated with me, regardless if I had 2 downloads or not. So that tells you, like, to me, vanity metrics, or whatever you want to call it, they don't really mean anything. And that's one thing I can say about podcasting, especially after like 200 guests almost. Like, some of my biggest stars, like people that are just regular people, everyday people, they get more downloads than the big names, like the Candace Vandels and all these big stars that you see on YouTube. I get regular everyday people, because people want to they can relate with that that person, that everyday person who is actually being open and honest about their depression, their anxiety. Like those are the people that I want. But then again, I sometimes reach out for people that are really good at what they do and they're probably well known or celebrity type, whatever, because I want to keep a good mix. But all in all, I can tell you from all my episodes, the people that are not like the well known, those are the ones that get the most downloads, and people won't believe it until I actually show them. I'm like, look at this lady.
Yep.
She's like 65 years old and like got the most downloads. I'm like, really?
Yep. And honestly, I haven't released all of my episodes yet of all the interviews I've done, but so far the ones I've released, it's the same here. I was blown away. The one that has the most downloads, I was like, didn't see that coming. But cool. But when I first started doing interviews, I knew my mission for the Audacity Academy was to highlight the fact that anyone can struggle with people pleasing. Anybody can struggle with boundaries. It doesn't matter if you are a stay-at-home mom or if you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or you are the president of the United States. It doesn't matter who you are or what realm you're in. These topics impact you or have impacted you at some point in your life. And that's just like, I think highlighting a well-rounded audience of guests, like highlighting a well-rounded guest portfolio keeps it relatable because there's someone who's going to relate to that episode no matter who you're interviewing,
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, and even like 10 years down the road, like somebody could be going through that and that video maybe save their life from taking their own life. I mean, and I've had people tell me that like this episode, that because I do a lot of solo episodes in between my guests, and a lot of people are like, if it wasn't for that episode, like I don't know if I'd be here, or you really touched my heart by speaking about this trauma that you went through as a child or growing up. And so just helping, just like I think you said even before the podcast, just helping one person, that there's no amount of money in the world that could replace that. It's like you've helped a human being, even if it's just one person, just by one podcast. So that's the platform that I use to reach the outside world is the podcast.
Because remember earlier in the conversation when we were talking about manifesting, you were like, pay attention to the little nuggets that come that urge you along. We can also act as a little nugget on someone else's manifestation journey as well. They stumble across our podcast or one of the YouTube videos or our Instagram feeds or run into us at the grocery store. Can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people at the grocery store, or the nail salon, or at restaurants, waiters and managers of restaurants who just see me journaling and they come up and they're just like, who are you? Like, I must talk to you about my day. And I'm just like, God damn it. The stupid empath energy is radiating off of me right now.
That's one thing I will say.
The better your vibes are, the more people are attracted to you.
Speaking of empaths, it comes with a lot of responsibility. Like people you'll attract people and they may not be the best for you too. I mean, there's a lot of narcissists and toxic people that will come towards you. And that's one of the major reasons why I wanted to create the podcast, is to talk about those hard subjects of maybe you live with a spouse who's a narcissist, or you work with a boss or somebody manipulative, or a family member that's toxic. How's that affect your life? And I truly 110% believe is whoever we hang around with, that's how our energy is going to be. So like if we're around negative people that are always talking down and just putting you down and talking about other people, you're going to feel like shit all the time. And I had to get rid of everyone. And right now I'm happy to say that I only have a handful of people that I talk to, like maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And they know why. And I try to keep a small circle because I hate to say it, but being an empath, like people want to take advantage of that. They want stuff from you, whether your energy, or they want you to listen to them, or even worse, like manipulate, try to take your energy and just play games with you. Like, so that's one thing I learned as an empath doing this podcast is you're going to find all types of people in this world, but you can only let only a few people in, because I did a whole vet. Like I went through all my Facebook. I took inventory of all my friends and even family. I'm like, does this person, are they, do they deserve to be in my life? Where before I used to ask, do I deserve to be in the same room as them? Am I okay in their presence? Now it's opposite. And I know you're big on that because you definitely are very good at talking about, having high standards and manifesting the best things. And so it's an abundance mindset. And I didn't have that. I had a scarcity mindset that if I don't have the most amount of friends, or if I don't have the most likes, or if people don't like me, my podcast is a failure. It's a black and white. Now it's like I have abundance mindset where I know the sky's the limit, money's not an issue, and I can pretty much point at anyone and hopefully they'll resonate with my podcast and be a guest. So I put that abundance mindset into my brain, and it just happens. Where before it was like, who's going to listen to you? Your voice sucks. I mean, you don't sound like confident of yourself. And on camera, are you crazy? YouTube? No, man, just you'd be better off just doing something else. And I just kept playing this thing over and over. And this has started back in 2013. And I just recorded an episode, delete it, recorded, delete it, never published it. Always like in that mode, I'm going to do it, procrastinated. And then finally, I'm like, enough of this shit. I don't care what I look like or what I sound like. This is me. I'm not going to hide myself. If you resonate, great. If you don't, that's great too. But I'm not doing it for everyone. I'm doing it for those people that get it. My people, the empaths, the highly sensitives, the people that really get it, that have been through trauma. And because you can't really speak on certain subjects with certain people. Like, I don't know if you notice, like even with therapists and stuff, like I love therapists. I've had almost like 50 of them on my podcast, but some of them I can't relate, even though you would think like, wow, they should get it, but some of them don't.
No.
And that's fine. It doesn't mean that they're not good at what they do and they have their place, but many times like I have to be like, I got to find someone else. And if that don't work, I go to someone else. So I kept trying and trying and trying. And to be honest, the best advice that I get is just like you said, you're at a coffee shop, somebody comes in, you have that conversation, changes your life in a second. Don't know the person, you'll never call them again. You don't know their name, or maybe you know their name, but you don't know anything else about them. And it just changes your trajectory, where it just took one person to put me on that path for my podcast.
So what was that fuck that shit moment that made you finally publish that first episode?
Well, I was going back and forth, and this is a true story that I actually shared in a lot of my episodes. I was in a trauma group and I was trying to make sense of my trauma. And so after the group, there was this one lady that would stay after, and this was online during COVID. And she was a Russian lady and she was very nice. And she was saying that like my voice is going to change the world. I see you doing something with recording, maybe like a talk show. She just kept saying this over and over. Now, I didn't know she was sick. She was very sick. Like she had this condition where if she went outside, she would have this immediate reaction. So she would be indoors all the time and she was always in a sauna. I did not understand what was going on, but she had some sort of immune response where it would attack her own body. So so after I talked to her for like 2 weeks, she convinced me to just at least do one episode. She's like, please do this, please do this. I'm like, what is your problem? Like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll just do one and that's it. Let me see how I feel. I did one episode and I just left it at that. And then when I went back to that trauma group, she was gone. Like I didn't have her phone number. She was a member of that trauma group, but she used a different name under Katrina or whatnot. Um, but she did her. I felt like she came in that group to push me to do something. Like, and I feel like the universe like made it that way. And then she just took off and never seen her again, never heard from her again. And here I am sitting here to now. I don't want to say it's all because of her, but I will say I give her a lot of credit by putting that seed in my head, pushing me to do that first episode, pushing me to and giving me that confidence saying your voice is going to change the world. You're going to change a lot of people's lives. And I just kept laughing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I can't even stand my voice. Like who's going to listen to me? And she's like, this is you might think that now, but that's because that's what you've been conditioned from your abusers and your traumatic events growing up. People told you would never amount to anything. No one wants to listen to you. Hell, what do you have to offer? Like that, when you change those questions, like, yes, you do have something to offer. You are an expert in your field of study because who better to talk about this than you? Because you dealt with trauma for decades and you're alive. You could have taken your life, which you always like you were having a lot of issues growing up and you made it this far. Who else would know better than you on this topic of dealing with life after trauma? And so that's where I came up with the tagline, the On-Call Empath, Life After Trauma. And I don't know if she's listening or if she's alive. If she's alive, great. But if she, I doubt that she is because she was really sick. But it just took one person to change a life, and she did change my life forever. Like it's like that's your purpose. Go do it. And because I was like, what am I here for? I'm not
Mhm.
here to work all my life and then die. Like, but now it's like, no, I'm here to help people and serve as much as I can and make an impact. And maybe years later, people will be like, oh, let's check out this podcast. What's this guy about? And it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And it was very therapeutic too. Like it was like therapy because I would literally have people on my podcast that went through exactly what I did. And so it was like therapy. And I can't describe it into word. Um, and that's why it's so important that every person that comes into our lives, whether you meet them in a grocery store, the gas station, or just passing in my podcast, like there's a story. Everyone has a story in their life. Your podcast is going to be unique to you. It's going to be Sarah, like your personality. It's all about you. There's not going to be another one like that. There's nothing that nobody in this world can compare it to because that's yours. And so everyone has something different. And that's how I look at from a metaphor like podcast, but same with people. Everyone has something to offer, you know.
Mhm. And unfortunately, when we've been conditioned, because I believe that people pleasers, we've been conditioned to people please. And the message that we're given is that we're not worth anything unless we're making other people happy. We're not worth shit unless
Mhm.
we are giving to other people, unless we're sacrificing. Who are we? There is no identity separate from what we can do for other people, whether that's a message we're given or whether that's a message we learn to tell ourselves. Did you notice when you first started doing podcasts, did you notice more negative voices coming from actually other people, or was most of what you had to overcome from inside your own head?
I think it was a little of both, but I do feel like growing up, like between like 2 years old to like, I don't know, 7 years old, everything that I was downloaded at that point, it carried over into my adulthood. Like it was downloaded in my system. So I had a way of thinking and processing things. So if I put a boundary and someone did not honor it, I, I would just let it go. I would be like, okay, And I would be that guy, like, okay, I don't want to get them upset, because
Mhm.
this person, I want them to like me. And now it's totally different. It's like, if I don't honor myself, I'm doing a disservice to myself. It's not ego, it's not like I'm better than you, it's nothing like that, but I have to put myself first.
Mhm.
And I would expect even the people that I coach, I tell them also, you have to put yourself first before everyone else, or you can't, it just won't work, especially with boundaries and people pleasing. That takes time, that takes a lot of practice. Like, I still have problems with it today. I had issues with it. I was talking to somebody and I was trying to get my point across, but I was trying to do it without saying you. I was using words like, I feel, this is how I feel. And so, to me, that I got what I needed to say out of that conversation, because I made the point that doesn't matter what you say, but this is how I feel. And
Mhm.
it's up to you to decide if you're going to give a shit about it or not. I'm telling you how I feel. You can't tell me I shouldn't feel this way. So
Mhm.
I had those hard conversations. And even today, even as a coach and talking to some of the best, people pleasing coaches and boundary coaches, they even have issues. So it's like, it's it's a very tough thing to do consistently, but once you do it more often and you can kind of walk yourself through. I always tell people, go into every conversation knowing what you want out of it. Don't try to do it after and kick yourself and be like, damn. Do you ever
Mhm.
wonder, like, you do something and you're like, I should have said that to that person? It happens to me all the time, but
Every time I'm in the shower, either later that day or like the next morning, I'm just like, man, could have said that. That would have been so good. It's always shower time for me is when I do. That's when I ruminate. It's either that or when I'm like trying to fall asleep at the end of the day. It's dreadful. It's terrible.
yeah.
I love that you said earlier in the conversation, like really towards the beginning, you were like, this is not, you don't just magically wake up one day and you're done people pleasing. You don't just magically wake up one day and you're done being in like an empath. It's not something you overcome. It's not something you beat. It's not something you do away with. It's an innately part of who we are. And it's consistently coming back to, it's developing a toolbox of skills and a routine, nurturing ourselves, self-care, checking in daily, constantly monitoring. If you get to the point like I eventually did, where you want to expand your social circle from 2 or 3 close people to include more, it's how do you actually take yourself through that process in a safe and supported way so that you're constantly monitoring, am I giving too
Yeah.
much? What kind of people am I allowing in? What's the number one thing that you think you do every single day that checks in with your energy, takes care of yourself, prioritizes your energy, all of that?
um Well, there's a couple things that I have to do every day just to remind myself, like, just to kind of keep my equilibrium up. And especially as an empath, because I'm going to go face the world with people at work and, podcasting and coaching. I have to journal every day. I have to write something. And the way I write it, it's like, it's kind of like I'm writing a story of a book and I'm the actor. So
Mhm.
I'm like writing in that form, or I'm writing in third person. So
Mhm.
it's like either one. And I'll tell you, like, that has been so helpful for me, because I might say something like, well, you're nervous about this thing that's going to happen today. What if it doesn't happen? Then what? And so I'll try to just write down all the things, like, oh, they won't like me. I'm not going to get that um, promotion, or they're not going to pay me what I'm worth. Whatever it is, I'll write down everything and I'll look at all this. And then I'll just kind of say, like, to myself, like, so what if that does happen? Is that going to define who you are? Is that going to ruin your reputation? Is that going to take away from the 200 some guests that you've had, or your credibility? No, it's not. It's just one aspect. And 5 years from now, it's not going to matter. So journaling just brings so many different avenues and thoughts that I would have never come up with myself if I just sat there and tried to figure it out in my head, jumble. But journaling and then movement, exercise, walking, doing something in nature, just by myself, like I have to be able to recharge. And that's a big thing with empaths is we have to remove ourselves from all this noise. I don't watch news. I don't really watch anything like that's negative, or people that complain, all that kind of stuff. I just get away from me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just want to be by myself and be able to get the energy that I need. Because with empaths, like if I'm around people too much all day long, I'll start to absorb that and I'll start to get tired and then I'll start to get depressed and anxious. And I know that. So
Mm-hmm.
one of my biggest things is I make, like certain time limits. I'm like, okay, I'll be here for only this half hour. I'll do this, no more than that. I'm going to talk to this person for only this amount of time. And so I have to have it regimented because if it's off, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to start having physical pain. I used to have really bad back pain back in the day when I didn't speak up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be repressed. I had a lot of mind body coaches on my podcast explain, like in crystal clear, like just drawing it, like this is connected to your nervous system. So when you say no to somebody and you repress it, don't be surprised if you have a migraine like an hour later. Like it's connected. And I was like, whatever. But guess what? Once I really grasped that, my migraines actually started going away. My back problems starting to go down, all because I just started speaking my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it took. No pills, nothing. Just telling people to go fuck themselves, and
Yep.
that did it.
Yeah, amazing. I was on the phone with my dad on Monday and he's like, Sarah, one thing you will not die of ever is ulcers. He's like, you do say what's on your mind. I was like, yeah, I had to learn. I mean, because it was starting to manifest physically for me. Constantly keeping my mouth shut was literally killing me. It literally kills you to do that. I'm dying to ask you this. Do you think all empaths are introverts?
um, it depends. Like I know a lot of extroverted empaths, but they're extroverted around certain people, if that makes sense. So let's say I'm in a room full of empaths, I'll be more outgoing. I'll start being more myself. I'll start laughing, joking, blah, 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 blah. You put me in a room with people I don't want to be around with or be close to, I'm going to shut down. I'm going to be introverted. I don't want to be around those people. They have nothing in common with me. Our
Mm-hmm.
conversation, even like when I talked to you and had you on my podcast, I think we talked before the podcast as well. You were at a coffee shop, and
I was.
I remember that exact moment when you came on the screen. You're drinking coffee.
Uh-huh.
You're at a coffee shop with your laptop, and you're just sitting there giggling. Before you even said a word, I'm like, okay, I can feel this energy. It's going to work. I already knew in my mind, like, all right, yes. But I've had people in the same thing where they're at the coffee shop. I'm like, no, there's something there with empaths. They can just sense other people's energy. And you get to a point where you can see body language, their facial expressions, the way you were sitting, cross armed, whatever it
Mhm.
was. Um, you just can tell what the motive is of that other person, if that makes sense. So back to your question about introverts, yeah, I will stay away from people um that I don't resonate with. But people like empaths, people I resonate with, I will be very extroverted. So I believe that you can flip back and forth. I think that is a possibility for
Mhm.
empaths.
Because it's so interesting. As I used to, I adopted the persona of being an introvert who hated everybody, right? It was how I protected
Mhm.
myself. It was just my
Yeah.
wall. Didn't trust anybody, didn't like anybody, totally had this story about me that, people just want to take from you. They just want to take, 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 take. But then when I did the work on myself and rewired my belief system and I look at people completely different now, I actually was able to tap into the fact that I do recharge.
Mhm.
Like I recharge by being around other people. If I am alone for too long, I get antsy, I get anxious, I get like I just go places in my mind. I start to get depressed. But then if I go to a coffee shop though, and I sit and I'm absorbing the energy of what's around me, it like recharges me almost instantly. And it's like, it's just really interesting. The more empaths I talk to, because most people lean towards, I want to be alone to recharge. I want to be alone to recharge. But I haven't met too many where they're like, connect me to the humans. I want to be around everyone. Plug me into
Yeah.
humanity, please.
Oh yeah. And even back to environment, like I know you're in the South, like I'm in a place where it's like the weather is like dreary a lot. It's gloomy. I'm in the eastern upper eastern of the US, like Michigan area, and it rains a lot. There's not a lot of sun. So that type of energy is not good for me. And I know it, So I've noticed living in San Diego, I have a whole different vibe. I'm more energetic. I'm more outdoorsy. I'm more outgoing. I'm more extroverted. You bring me back here, I'm kind of like, I don't want to talk to nobody. It's like dreary. And some might say that's seasonal depression. That's okay. And I'll be like, no.
There might be a technical term for it,
Yeah,
I guess.
there might be a little sprinkle of that, but that's just like, I need the freaking sun. I need to see like the mountains. I need to be around animals, and I love dogs, and I believe like animals with empaths is huge because we connect with animals, especially dogs and cats. And people might laugh at this, but like I feel like there are people from like in a dog form, like an angel of some sort, because they will never let you down. They'll never talk back. They'll always be there for you. And so for me, like I would be totally fine with having a bunch of dogs in and living in a warm place and palm trees and just do my thing with the podcast. Like that would be ultimate dream of my life. But there are some people that swear that they are animal empaths, where they can actually get the energy from actual animals. And at first, like I would, a lot of people might be smirking and like, yeah, whatever, animals. No, animals has something that I don't think humans can pinpoint on an earth level, like if you want to call it that. Like there is something, they have something that we can't fathom. Like we don't have that sense. And whether it's feelings, like they can sense our feelings, but they're here to kind of serve. They're here to serve us, to teach us a lesson that, I'm going to love you no matter whatever you treat me. Like I exist because of you. Like there's no other animal on the planet that makes you feel that way. I mean, even humans, like human to humans, like how many people are like that, like I just here to make sure you're happy, and I'm here to help you, and not too many.
That's people pleasing. That's we don't want humans that are going to do that. But yeah, no.
We want animals, but
yeah.
But an animal will never leave you, and if you try to leave them, they'll come right back. I've had many where they've dropped them off like miles away. They come home, it's on their bed. I'm like, what? Like, how do they have these special superhuman powers? So that's why I think empaths are so just drawn to animals, especially dogs and stuff.
My animals know. I have 4, as you know. I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. For my listeners, in case you didn't know, I live in a zoo. I've got a Rottweiler, a pit bull, and 2 cats. And when I'm talking to someone, one of my cats, she was here sniffing around a little while ago. When I'm talking to someone and she likes who I'm talking to, she jumps up on my lap usually and will settle in. She used to do it in all my therapy appointments without fail. When I've had coaching clients on Zoom, she would get up on my lap and she would sit and she would hang out. But all 4 of my animals, as soon as my energy shifts, if I'm upset about something, they'll come from 4 different corners of the house and they'll be on the couch with me. Dogs will be licking my face. Cats will be on my shoulder or on my lap. They can sense it. They know. And believe it or not, my plants as well. I think any living thing, empaths have the ability. Different empaths are on different levels with being able to tune into different energy being emitted by different things. Because my plants will suffer if I am in a chronically negative space. If I'm negative and I haven't saged, I haven't been putting out good energy, if I've been just chronically ruminating on something that's more catabolic, I'll notice my plants will be more sickly. They'll dry out faster, they'll wilt faster. And then when the energy is really up and there's more sunshine and more happiness and more upbeat energy and vibes being put out, my plants will thrive. And it's incredible the impact that we have on the world around us.
Yeah.
And I think so many people who are empaths or people pleasers who struggle with this, they don't realize the superpower that they've been gifted with.
Yeah.
Like really, really realizing and recognizing that you have the ability to literally influence the energy of a room when you walk into it. But the first step is like acknowledging the fact that it's not a weakness that you have. It's not something to hide. It's not something to apologize for. It's not something to try to overcome in therapy, though therapy, I love therapy. Therapy can give you lots of tools to manage it. It's realizing that you have the ability to influence the world just with your thoughts. That's so fucking cool. That's so fucking cool. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Bend reality. I think that who was talking about that, where you can shift reality, you can make your own reality, which eventually, like maybe in the future, but empaths do have that superpower, especially if you use it towards good, and you can pretty much read people, and it's a great thing to have once you own it and you don't shy away from it. Use it for your advantage. I use it at, I used to use it at my job, just to kind of keep my distance from certain people, or when someone comes and they're like, they want to do something free for you, and you have that intuition, like what do they want in return, like all these things. It's like now it's automatic, like I can just decipher like right on the spot. It took years to kind of tweak, but I'm at a point where I just feel like that power, that superpower can be used, and I use it on my podcast, and so far it's worked.
Mm-hmm. So as an empath, what is the number one indication, like the number one buzzer that goes off in your brain that tells you need to set a boundary?
I would probably say the number one thing is the person, the way that the situation of the person. So if they're asking me to do something that I don't feel comfortable with, it's the way they ask me. Like if they're coming from a loving place and they're taking my consideration, they're like, I know you're busy, no pressure. If you don't want to, that's cool. But if you can do this, that would be great. If they come from that type of scenario, or are they coming to me from a place of gain, or they're trying to do like a power trip, an ego thing, like you're going to do this for me. We all are doing this. So, you got to chip in. When I feel pressured of any way, or I'm singled out, that's exactly 100%. I have to put a boundary right then and there, because I know when you say no to somebody, watch their behavior. That's the biggest thing I tell all of my coaching clients, is say no to somebody just to say no. Even if you don't, you're not friends with them, say no and see if they get angry. And if they get angry, what comes with that, they either belittle you, or they put you down, or they make a backhanded comment. That's a telltale sign that you need to have boundaries. There's no negotiation. And I use that word no negotiation with this example, is because when people do that, I tell them this is non-negotiable. And they're gonna pat their eyes. Oh, you're not a team player. Oh, you're selfish. Okay, that's fine. But I can't control what you're thinking. You could call me all the bad words you want, but that has nothing to do with me. That's your problem, your reaction. My response is my response. Like, that's it, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I used to get gaslighted all the time, and be like, maybe I shouldn't have said no. That person's just so nice. Gosh, I don't want to let them down. But even to the best of us, I mean, there's been many times where I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I end up doing it just because there's that I think, what's that, 4 agreements, that unsaid rule that because I scratched your back, you got to scratch mine. I always had issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, fuck. They bought me a Christmas gift. I got to buy one too, a bigger one.
Uh-huh.
And so I feel obligated. But then I'm like, there's no contract. There's no contract. Just because you scratch my back, I got to scratch yours. Where is that written? It isn't. And once I started studying that and learning that,
Mm-hmm.
if that person does not want to talk to me because they did something good for me and I didn't say, like, I don't do stuff to get a thank you. I don't do that anymore. I do things because I want to. A
Mm-hmm.
thank you is great. A pat on the back is great. But for example, like, I was at this job once and I was doing really, really well. And my numbers were like really high, but my boss would kind of downplay it, but never say great job, never say, anything positive. But he would only do it behind closed doors because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't want everyone else to, you know. So in that sense, I'm like, I'm working hard so I can make money for myself and make myself look good. I know it's making you look good, but I'm not doing that for you. So I made it sure in my head, I'm like, whatever you say, whether I'm doing a great job or a crappy job is irrelevant, because in my mind, I know I'm doing a good job and I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing in everything I do. I hold up a door open because that's the person I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do that to everyone, even somebody that's old crossing the street. That's who I decided, that's the man I decided I wanted to be. And that goes for everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to do stuff that even when people aren't looking. I use the shopping cart thing because it makes people laugh, but
Put
I
the buggy
I
back, even if somebody's not looking at.
I used to leave it out before, but now every time I come out of Target, I walk all the way in, then I put it in, and I have a little voice that says, "What kind of person you want to be, Raj? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be that person?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "No, I don't." Okay, then
Yep.
do, because you were one of those guys that used to push the cart when you were like 15, 16, right? I'm like, yeah. All right, then what do you want to be? You want to be somebody that just kind of gets away with it, or do you want to just be a person of integrity and do what you say you're going to do? So I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the biggest thing that I do want to like leave your audience with is, if you have values in your life, even when people aren't looking and you're not, you don't want to get brownie points, just you do it because you know that that's the person you want to be. Because
Mm-hmm.
on my deathbed, I want to be able to say, like, I did these things because I wanted to. This is who I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do the On-Call Empath and be a podcaster. I wanted to be a man of my word, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to, not because what society would think or not think. So that's just how I kind of live my own personal life. And again, this took years of self-discovery, and I just keep going back to this shopping cart thing, is because that's how I look at life on every aspect. It's like, you can go half-ass it, or you can go the full, put it in the little cart thing and just do it 100%. So that's how I do everything in life: podcast, working out, eating healthy. I try my best, I should say, to do all these things. Am I perfect? No. Do I have off days? Yes. But I know that in my mind, I know what I want to do, and I stick to it.
Mm-hmm. I teach it like this in my boundaries course and with my clients. Your standards are a reflection of your values, and your boundaries are the face of your standards. It's all tied together, but at the root of it, you can't have boundaries without standards. You can't have standards unless you have your values, and you can't identify your values without knowing who you are. So it really comes down to, who are you? Who do you want to be? What do you want to represent?
Yeah.
Once you have that foundation, everything else kind of falls into place.
Mhm.
It's not what you do. regardless, listeners, whether you want to have a podcast, you want to write a book, you want to be an entrepreneur, or you just want to be a kick-ass parent or friend, or you want to be amazing at your job and be able to retire on a beach someday. It doesn't matter what you want to do. It matters who you want to be and what you want to leave behind at the end of the day. Because the only two things guaranteed are death and taxes. So after your taxes are paid, and you're dead and gone,
Yeah.
how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah. Very well said. And the issues that we have today is going to be irrelevant 10, 20 years from now, because like you said, on your deathbed, you want to ask yourself, did you do the best you could, or do you have some regrets? I mean, there's so many things that I want to do still on my bucket list, but I think if it ended today or soon, I could honestly say that the biggest thing is, like, I found my passion, where I know a lot of people, clients, they have no clue what they're here for. And they'll go through this lifetime and not even know, where at least I can say that my mission here was to spread a message and help as many people as I can.
And you're doing that.
I appreciate it. Yeah. It's a great feeling.
It is a great feeling. It is an amazing, amazing feeling. I've had that conversation with a couple of people. I never want to I may not make the money I want to make, right? We may not actually, we could all die tomorrow. So we may not always, all of us, be able to climb Mount Everest or do some of the things that are on our bucket list, but that stuff is kind of irrelevant. I don't want to be on my deathbed someday and go, I wish I told that person to fuck off. Like I've always known I wanted to be the person who, at least, she said what she needed to say when she wanted to say it. If there's one thing people say about me at my funeral, it's going to be, she had a mouth on her. She said what she needed to say. It wasn't the ulcers that killed her.
Self-induced stress.
Right, across. None of that. Nope. She absolutely had no self-induced stress. Right. We all just got to do the best that we can, but You're waking up every day and you're living your purpose, and just keep that vision of what you want to create and the legacy that you want to leave, and shit just keeps falling into place for you. The right guests keep coming across your path, the right conversations happen. And there are a lot of people out there that appreciate you. I know, because I read the reviews that they write on all of your shit.
Oh, thank you.
Man, he's doing good shit in the world.
Right. But that, just to mention real quick, is when you do stuff like that you are passionate about, and you forget about the money and the fame and reviews and likes, all that shit comes naturally. It just comes. I'm telling you guys that are listening out there, if I focused only on like money and reviews and likes and downloads, I would not be here today. Like that was like the last thing I focused on. Once I focused on helping every person and trying to create value, everything else just fell in place. It was amazing. I just looked on it one day. I'm like, holy shit, I got so many reviews. I got all these people raving about me. Like, I didn't ask for this. Why are they doing this? Well, because when you're on your mission and you have your passion, people know, especially you yourself. I mean, I was watching you before I even met you, and I can tell you were on your mission, and that just inspired me. So I can't
just keep inspiring each other. We're just going to keep swapping episodes. And that's okay.
And we got to have
makes the world go around.
Yeah, we'll have you back again for a follow-up.
Absolutely. I've had so many guests on here who are just like, we didn't even we didn't even scratch the surface of all the topics that we can have. I am absolutely happy to have repeat people on my podcast. It's just, why have one conversation when you can have many? So Raj, tell us, of course you have the banner background on your video, so those of us who are watching on YouTube know the On-Call Empath, but tell us where people can connect with you if they want to reach out, follow,
Sure.
listen to the podcast.
You could type in on Google On-Call Empath, go on Instagram. It's the On-Call Empath. That's where all my stuff is. So just type in the On-Call Empath and you'll go right to my Instagram. And I believe my podcast is also on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, anywhere you listen to it. So check them out. I got some really good guests coming up very soon.
It seems like every other day I look, I'm like, oh, there's another badass person. Oh, there's another cool person. Oh, look, it's another cool episode that just dropped.
You're gonna get there too. I'm gonna be like, okay, I gotta borrow some of your people too.
Right. Hopefully. Like I said, collaboration makes the world go round. And
Yeah.
I always thought when I first started doing this, I thought people would be like, and I don't know if this was similar for you when you first started interviewing people. I definitely had a who would want to be interviewed by me kind of a like it was brief, but it was definitely there. And then it took like one or two or three people that I looked up to saying, oh my God, I would love to be on your podcast. Like, you're so cool. I had my first person like fangirl over me on an episode, and I was like, this is mind blowing. This is the coolest shit ever.
I tell you, like,
people love to share their story and talk and feel like everyone wants to feel like they matter. It doesn't matter how big or how small you are, you know?
Yeah. And that's the best part about podcasts. It really doesn't matter if you're really big or really small. Everyone has a story. Every person, I don't care who you are, everyone has a story in their life that it can change somebody else's. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today, Raj. I appreciate you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to chat with us today. My last question for you is whatever the universe has for you right now in this moment, quick, without hesitation, to say to the people, one tip, piece of wisdom, piece of advice.
Sure. So number one thing I can say is if you want something done in this world that you want to do it yourself. That's what I did with my podcast. And I wanted to outsource it and get other people's collabs and please help me through all the window. Did it myself, the editing, the calling the people, please be on my podcast, all of it from scratch. And that goes for life. Don't rely on anyone, do it yourself, because then you have no expectations and you can't be like disappointed. So just go into everything knowing that you're in control of it. You get to choose, but you have to do it yourself. Don't rely on this person or even a loved one. Just do it yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Don't rely on people to give you permission. Don't rely on people to show you the way. And then if you're doing it yourself, you set the standard for how it gets done. Yeah. So if you get to the point where you can outsource or lean on support, you know how you want it done. Yeah. It's easier to do it that way than to, from the get-go, have other people setting a standard for your work, something that's your baby. Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. Oh, thank you so much for that, Raj. All right, everybody, we're closing out. This was one of my longer episodes, but honestly, this was so much fun. We could have talked for hours. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Raj. And I will see y'all next week.
See ya.